All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're essentially opening up the archives. We are going to put on our biographer's hat to trace what is honestly a fascinating, almost mythic journey. We're tracking a climber's internal evolution toward ultimate sovereign individualism. Now, this isn't just some abstract story. It's a literal map of a psychological transformation, taking us all the way from the safe, cozy confines of the village to a radical state of being known as the Seventh Solitude. It's a deep dive into what it actually takes to break away from the herd and forge your own inner reality. To really feel the sheer weight of this journey, we've got to start right at the climax. Picture this. You step into a stifling, heavy room. The climber, who has now totally transformed into the watchman, arrives at the Temple of Perpetual Light. He's standing right in front of the high priest, who is absolutely terrified. This temple, with its massive stained glass dome, is just choking on the soot of 1,000 years of holy smoke. The sources describe it as filtering the sky into a dim amber lie. And there stands our watchman, not as a normal guy, but framed by this roaring, black-edged halo of flame that literally sounds like a winter gale. He's the embodiment of everything this highly ordered temple is terrified of. And the high priest? He is completely shaken. He's clutching this golden scepter that has gone cold in his trembling hands. And he just verbally attacks the watchman's terrifying independence. He screams out, "What is this blasphemy of the gut? You carry a fire that consumes its own shadow." You see, the priest is clinging for dear life to the comforting, predictable amber lie of his temple. To him, the watchman's flame smells like the abyss. It's a chaos that threatens every beautiful little hope they've cultivated under their predictable sun. But hold on a second. Before we hear the watchman's absolutely devastating comeback, we need to hit pause. To truly grasp the nature of this dark fire that's got the high priest shaking in his boots, we have to retrace our steps. Remember, we're acting as the biographer here. We need to flip back to the early chapters of his life to see the grueling shedding process that made a confrontation like this even possible. I mean, how exactly did a simple guy from the village become a literal force of nature? Well, it begins with what we call the architecture of social shedding. Act 1, the social shedding. This brings us right to the foundation of the journey. So here are the first 3 valleys of silence he has to cross. First, he sheds his name. He literally just walks away from the village. And honestly, it's a dizzying relief. He finally puts down the heavy pack of society's roles. He's no longer a worker, a brother, a citizen. But the silence of the woods? It's a bit of a trick. By the second solitude, he realizes he still speaks the village's language in his head. He's still constantly explaining his actions to a ghost audience, trapped in the thou of social expectation. He actually has to violently starve those echoes until that noisy thou in his head becomes a singular, sovereign I. Finally, a terrible winter hits in the third solitude. He's freezing. He misses the warmth of the herd and faces this desperate temptation to run back. But instead, he wraps himself in the fur of resolve. He stops seeking external heat and learns to find a steady fire completely in his own heartbeat. Empty of the herd, he's ready for the high altitudes. Act 2, the intellectual desert. Out here in the desert phase, it's his intellect that gets pushed to the absolute limit. In the fourth solitude, he looks up and realizes the universe doesn't offer a moral GPS. The stars simply do not care about his human concepts of good or evil. He's totally without a map, which forces him to become his own compass. And then, going into the fifth solitude, something shifts. He actually starts to love the danger of being this isolated. He's standing on the edges of cliffs just to feel the wind, realizing that truth isn't some cozy destination you finally arrive at. It's a dangerous, solitary dance performed all alone on the heights. But just when he thinks he's mastered it, boom, he hits a massive wall in Act 3, the Great Fatigue. This is the sixth solitude, which the sources describe as the most painful valley of the entire journey. It creates this soul-crushing weariness. He becomes what's called the hermit of the spirit. Basically, he's too far from everyday people to be understood, but he's too close to the sun to be comfortable. He is so burdened by his own wisdom. And the ultimate trap here is that despite being totally isolated, he secretly still wants an audience. He wants a divine eye to look down, see his massive struggle, and validate his profound wisdom. Okay, snap back to our present-day standoff in the temple. Having that biography of the solitudes gives us a mind-blowing realization. The high priest and his entire temple, they represent this exact trap. The temple is the ultimate monument to this sixth solitude's pride. It's a sublime prison. The priest defends a system where solitude and piety are just tools used to feel superior. It relies 100% on external approval, just dressed up as cosmic order. So look at the massive contrast we have here. The temple, stuck in the sixth solitude, desperately needs the mountain's reflection. It needs a predictable glow to guarantee its special place in the cosmic hierarchy. But the watchman's dark fire? That's the seventh solitude. It is a self-willed strength born of absolute indifference. It doesn't care about illuminating the path for anyone else. It burns purely for the sake of the guy carrying it. The imagery here is just breathtaking. The high priest is basically demanding a mirror. He needs an external, reflected sun to validate his existence, so he can feel holy while looking down on the terrified people in the pews. But the watchman shatters that mirror. He turns away from the false light of the sky entirely and embraces the weight of the void, achieving this terrifying yet totally joyful autonomy. And now, knowing everything he endured, we finally hear the watchman's response to the priest. With a hollow rasp that literally makes the temple walls weep dust, he delivers this crushing truth. He says, "You cling to the mountain because it gives you a height from which to look down. But I have frozen in the third solitude, and I have walked without a map in the intellectual desert. I have walked through the seventh gate. My fire is dark because it needs no sky to feed it." He's telling him, "My fire was forged in absolute loneliness, and in that void I found the power to burn without your permission." To really feel the weight of those words, let's look at the psychological state he's achieved in Act 4, the overfullness. This is the legendary seventh solitude. And notice the shift to this brilliant Nietzschean light imagery. This isn't the silence of an empty void, it's the silence of a cup that is overflowing. In this stage of overfullness, he is so packed with his own golden abundance that he essentially becomes his own sun. He's a cloud charged with lightning, just waiting to break. He isn't out there seeking truth anymore. He has literally become a truth, a force of nature. This breakdown brilliantly maps that whole internal evolution. Think about it. In those first three stages, the focus was all on escaping the others, breaking ties with society, language, the herd. And the psychological result was pure relief. But by the time we hit the seventh solitude, the focus shifts entirely to the self. It's the ultimate spiritual recovery where the soul finally accepts its homelessness. It breaks ties not just with society, but with its own ego, its own need for a cosmic witness. It turns that early relief into the absolute, unbreakable ice of autonomy. And so, standing right there at the altar, the watchman's dark fire licks at the priest's embroidered robes until the gold thread tarnishes and curls. He destroys the old comforts. He burns away those amber lies to make room for ultimate creation. Because the core takeaway from this entire journey is this: true sovereignty requires walking through your own intellectual desert, completely past the need for any audience, human or divine. As the temple literally crumbles around these old illusions, the watchman turns to walk out into a new morning of his own making. And as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to think about. In the architecture of your own life, will you seek the safe, predictable reflection of the village, or will you brave the void and forge your own dark fire?